There's a 100-year-old law that's keeping your rent high, keeping your home unaffordable, and keeping your city frozen in time. It's not interest rates, it's not the Fed, it's zoning laws, and they're keeping you poor. Let me show you how. So zoning laws started in the early 1900s. They actually started in LA in 1908 when they were trying to exclude washing houses or laundries because they were Chinese owned out of residential neighborhoods. That's actually how zoning started. Then New York stepped in and started to implement their own during industrialization. They were trying to keep residential and industrial areas separate. That was the original point. So on the surface, they were all about organizing cities. But behind the scenes, zoning laws are actually used to segregate communities. Back then, it was redlining, but today, it's still being done, just with a smile and a city code. Zoning decides what you can build and where, and in most cities, they say you can't build apartments or triplexes or duplexes here. Most of the laws are geared towards single-family housing. Today, zoning is land use controlled by its local government. And here's what zoning really does. It blocks new housing. It keeps supply low and prices high. This is both for rentals and for ownership, because when you restrict supply and there's demand, prices go up. Many of these laws make it illegal to build multifamily housing in many communities. This is the reason that I don't buy in many areas, because many communities around the country block multifamily communities and high-density housing. They don't want it. They simply don't want it, especially the people living in the single-family neighborhoods, which are typically voters which support the local city council and mayors. Zoning also turns new development into a long, expensive nightmare. This directly leads to less supply, which of course leads to higher prices, both for sale housing and for rentals. For example, the town that I live in only allows single-family housing, and there are no lots under the size of 1 acre. What this has done is it's pushing the price of these houses to all-time highs. In many of these areas, this is specifically why you're paying more for rent, for houses, and for land, because of these zoning laws. We just recently did a podcast with an expert in this field to ask them why, and she reiterated that a lot of these old zoning laws have been in place for over 100 years. Many of these laws are even threatening old historical buildings in really cool downtown areas as a result of these onerous parking restrictions or height restrictions or even setbacks from the streets. So these zoning laws need to be looked at on an individual case-by-case basis, specifically as it results to affordability. The other thing that she mentioned is that as these zoning laws become harder and harder and harder, then the first responders, think of the fire and the police, the ambulance, and those kinds of things, they are continually pushed to the further outskirts of town, more into the rural areas because of affordability. So they themselves can't afford to live in the downtown core. So when there's any kind of an accident or any kind of an emergency, the response time for many of these people are much longer because they have to live on the outskirts of town. As a result of this, many of these zoning laws even have safety concerns and safety issues associated with them. So why is this important? It's important because if you look at the population growth over the last 20 years, which is probably the majority of you, you would know that the U.S. has grown by 58 million people. So those 58 million people need to be somewhere. And I know they're all different ages, etc., and sometimes they can be absorbed in existing households. Many of them do move out, graduate from college, graduate from high school, and they do require additional housing. At the same time, many of these cities and politicians and zoning laws are restricting development and construction in a lot of these areas where people are trying to move or are moving, which is pushing prices of housing and prices of rent to sky-high numbers. So what is the city doing? They're starting to impose rent control and rent caps. All you got to do is Google this, and you'll see that the state of Washington just implemented a rent cap for all rents because of this exact problem. Instead of looking at their zoning and allowing more construction in areas to actually soften it for both the renters and the homeowners and lower prices by adding more supply, what they've decided to do was implement policy to restrict the rents on many, many units, which is just going to redirect money to other areas, just like it's done to Oregon and areas of California that are sitting on really old housing stock from the 40s and the 50s and the 60s. So you're paying for zoning each and every month, whether you know it or not. zoning laws are quietly locking you out of the American dream. So let me give you the developer side of this. My partner Ross and I, as you guys know, have been buying and building apartments for over 30 years. And we run a company with over 10,000 apartments across the western United States. And zoning laws are some of our biggest challenges. They basically are a barrier to entry for supply and affordability. We've had many projects delayed months and even years as a result of outdated zoning. In many cities, some of these outdated zoning laws can add a year or two in the zoning process, only to find out after lots of money spent that you can't build a project anyway as a result of the vote of the local jurisdictions. Time, money, and higher rents for existing tenants that live in the area. If you want to avoid the biggest zoning mistakes that kill deals before they start, I put together a free guide for you. It's called Can't Build Here, 7 Zoning Mistakes That Cost Investors Millions. Download it below and use it before your next property purchase. Zoning boards don't just slow you down, they kill deals completely. Deals that could have been created and developed that would have created thousands of affordable units. So who wins? Wealthy homeowners that don't want any change in their neighborhoods. Politicians that want votes from the single-family homeowners. The NIMBYs, or not in my backyards. And cities oftentimes make more money from the developers of single-family housing. So zoning definitely does protect home values and prices, but it does not protect people. It's a system designed to benefit the few at the expense of the many. So if we want housing to be affordable, again, here's some things that we need to do. End single-family only zoning. Allow ADUs or accessible dwelling units, duplexes, and triplexes throughout the community. Incentivize developers to build affordable housing in areas that need it and where people are going. We need a blended housing policy because not everyone is wealthy. As a developer, I've seen how zoning delays, blocks, or even kills smart projects. As we know, real estate is a team sport, but right now, zoning boards are rigging the game. So if you're an investor, this is something you cannot overlook. So I highly recommend that you download the 7 zoning mistakes that most investors miss. Please download it at the link below.